Welcome to Not in a Huff with Jackson Huff, where we interview newsmakers, storytellers, and all-around interesting people. Sit back, relax, unless you're driving, and enjoy the show. Here's Jackson.
Hello. Thanks so much for joining me. I am Jackson Huff. This is Not in a Huff. Appreciate you being here today. Another interesting guest. I am interviewing Geoffrey Golden. Now, Geoffrey, a little bit different type of interview than a lot of the other ones, but he works in the gaming and entertainment industry. So he's going to talk a lot about, his newsletter that he creates. It's kind of a build your own adventure game that comes to your email inbox. He's going to tell us how he creates video games, how he creates board games, how he creates comic books. It's kind of an interesting guy. Like I said, it's different than a lot of the things that we have covered in the past. But he's very he's got a lot of really cool things to share with us, and he's kind of been a lot of different areas in the industry. Everything from making Sesame Street comics to adults only board games. So he's really insightful on kind of explaining how the entertainment industry works. Some really big surprises on how easy it is to create games, but harder to actually get into TVs and movies and things like that. I think a lot of people can learn quite a bit from our conversation. So without further ado, here is my conversation with Geoffrey Golden. Geoffrey, thanks so much for joining us. If you would, just tell us a little bit about yourself and your career. I guess what inspired you to go into such diverse creative background?
Thanks, Jackson. What inspired me to... I think of myself as a writer, but I'm a writer of multimedia. So I've worked in many different mediums as a writer. I've worked in games, which is where I currently work the most. I've worked in audio, podcasting, and audio fiction. I've worked in a little bit of TV and movies. I've worked in advertising even. So yeah, just all over the place. But I always wanted to be a writer. I remember when I was a kid, I think I was in third grade, we had an assignment where we were supposed to write commercials. Like we were learning the very basics of media literacy in third or maybe fourth grade. Elementary school, and like we were learning the basics of this, and I wrote a commercial, and my teacher said, this is really, really good. And that was super encouraging. I think maybe that was when I first decided I really loved writing. I like doing things where people praise me, Jackson. I'm a big praise guy. So yeah, that may have started it. I also come from a very creative family. My mom is an actress, and my dad writes plays and musicals and stuff, and my sister is a producer. She's a TV producer. So it runs in the family, I think.
Yeah, I think having that those creative genes always help.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So the next question I have for you, because I was doing some research on your website, and I noticed you talked about how apparently while you were in high school, you created some parody songs, and then they got some airtime across the country and radio stations. So if you would tell us a little bit about that and how that happened.
That was fascinating. So I have to take you back to the early internet. I'm not sure what your earliest memories of the internet are, but I go back dial-up bulletin boards, that sort of archaic technology. But so this was a little bit later. So this was when I was in high school. So this would be the late 90s. I love comedy. I love writing humor when I get the opportunity to. I like writing all kinds of things, but I especially do enjoy writing humor. And for a long time, I was writing comedy specifically, and this was sort of my first taste of it. There was a website called mp3.com. So basically, at the time, Napster was causing a major stir because of copyright infringement, and people were using it on a mass scale. And MP3s as an idea was revolutionary, right? Especially if you're a kid, you're a teen, you just download all the music that you want off Napster. And Napster in those days had an amazing library of content. It was a thing of beauty. It was like, remember in Game of Thrones where they go to the library, that incredible library, and it's just got every book you could possibly imagine in their world. It was like that with music. It contained obscure things that you would never, you would think, oh yeah, it's got the latest Britney Spears or Christina Aguilera, whatever. But no, it was also like really obscure, weird B-sides for it's just anything you could imagine. Oh, yeah. So anyway, it was causing the industry major headaches, and MP3.com came because it was an idea to give a platform to unsigned artists, to independent artists, to use MP3 as a way of promoting folks you may not have heard of before. Mm-hmm. And I was on the internet at that time, and I had stumbled onto mp3.com somehow, and I realized, hey, it wouldn't be so hard to record song parodies with this, because I already had the technology for recording. I did some shows, some radio shows for a local college radio station. So I already had recording technology and experience. So I was like, hey, maybe I could upload stuff to mp3.com. And that's what I did. And the comedy charts on mp3.com were sort of a lost area. There was like a lot of, things in like bold letters, like all caps letters, like, if Yoda had sex, like that kind, like just like attention grabby kind of stuff, sort of, spammy kind of content. And I was releasing parody songs, like original parody songs, and that really caught on. That was, there weren't a lot of people who were doing humor that was like not, just trying to get your attention, was also like, yeah, I'm doing my best to make comedy that you might actually enjoy, as opposed to like, I am creating something that you will be curious and need to click on. And it worked. And I was a #1 artist on mp3.com throughout that for the next 3 or 4 years or so, with my song parodies. There was constant legal issues with them, because parody is legal. It's considered fair use legally, but because of Napster, mp3.com was afraid of drawing the ire of the record industry because they were suing Napster like crazy. So I would have to. There were ways we worked around. We worked around it to make it work, to buying mechanical licenses to songs and stuff. But yeah, for a while it was great, and then mp3.com imploded, like all internet businesses. They got a flood of cash. They got flush with cash. They spent a lot of cash. They made a lot of people very happy. And I remember, so it was very popular, the website. And I remember going to like a summer camp, and people knew me before, just from mp3.com. Like, people recognized me, which is something I had never happened to me before. It was so cool. And yeah, a radio station in New Zealand started to play. There were some radio stations across the U.S. that were playing the songs, but one radio station in New Zealand was playing it, and they were playing a parody I did of the Venga Boys, and the radio station actually had the Venga Boys on. The Venga Boys, they did the song, the Six Flags song, that the old man dances to, Bald Old Man dances to. It was that band. Okay. And so what happened was the radio station got an interview with the Venga Boys, and then they played the Venga Boys my parody of one of their songs. And
that's cool. And a little scary.
Yeah, it was I was like, hey, what did the Venga Boys think? Like they liked it. The Big Boys
Okay.
liked it. So there you go. So yeah, it was a fun ride. It was one of the first of many experiences working for like digital content companies, working for websites, and it would be kind of the same story repeated over and over again, where the company gets a lot of money, they go big, they run out of money in a few years, and then everybody gets fired. Or in this case, the well sort of dried up. There was like kind of like with YouTube has that a system of paying people who like YouTubers, depending on how popular their videos are. This was true with mp3.com. You got paid depending on how popular how many times you got streamed. And basically that money just went down. It started pretty good, then it went down. And eventually it was just like, yeah, we're not doing this anymore.
Was it serious? Was it serious money? Was it sustaining you, or is it just like a little side thing?
Well, I was in high school.
Okay.
And it was a lot of money for a high schooler. I remember my dad wanted me to get a job working at CBS that summer. And I made a lot more on mp3.com the first summer that I did it than I ever would have working at CBS.
That's awesome.
So
was that kind of your first job? Because that's a great first job story. I worked at CVS as my first job. I worked at the dry cleaner, and I was a internet star.
Yeah, no, it wasn't my first. It wasn't my first paid gig. My first paid gig was this was again in high school, earlier in high school. I worked as like an IT. I worked as like a tech support, like calling. People would call me and I would fix usually their Macintoshes, whatever was wrong with it. I would come in, and sometimes I did the house calls too. But but mp3.com was definitely a very formative early experience in my career for sure.
It sounds really like definitely a good story, good party story anyways. So tell us, you mentioned a little bit about some of the other things you've done. If you would, you've kind of dabbled in a lot of different mediums when it comes to, these creative arts. If you would just kind of tell us what those are. I don't want to leave one out by trying to list them myself.
Absolutely. Well, currently I am focused on video games. I'm a narrative designer, and I work for a number of different studios around the world. One in Indonesia, some in America, but one in Indonesia, one in Lithuania, like all around the world. It's really cool. So the game of mine that just launched recently is called Sandchip, and it's on iOS and Android, and it was a #1 strategy game. And it was a game, one of Apple's games we love, and it was super fun to work on it, and I still am working on it. As a narrative designer or story writer for games, it's really interesting because you're coming in usually when some of the story has already been figured out. So at least like the theming elements of the world have already been figured out, but there's generally no story. So because they're game designers, right, who are leading the projects, so they are, coming up with, okay, well, we know this character is going to fly because the square because the square moves up and down vertically. So we know that the square is fly. So therefore this character is going to fly. So like they come in with some of the puzzle pieces, and then my job is to put the puzzle pieces together and make a compelling and interesting narrative and figure out how to express that narrative to the player. I love it because it presents new challenges. So yeah, every game is a different set of challenges. It's super cool. Other things I've worked on, proud of tabletop games. So I love role-playing games like Dungeons and Dragons, and I've made 2 of my own systems. One is an official game tying in with Wet Hot American Summer, called Wet Hot American Summer Fantasy Camp, based on the feature film. Then I've worked on podcasts, as I say. I've done work for. I've worked on podcasts for Wondery, for Stitcher for a children's network called Pinna. And it's always super cool to work on a new audio fiction project. I love audio. And then comics. I love comics. I've worked on comic books based in Sesame Street, Disney Princesses, Harvey comics like Richie Rich and Casper the Friendly Ghost. And I co-ran a publishing company with my partner Amanda for many years, for 8 years, and we published comics and comedy books for folks from The Daily Show, The Onion, Adult Swim, and that's called The Devastator. And that was really fun to do, and I wrote several books in addition to being a co-publisher. So yeah, that gives you a little bit of an idea of what I've worked on. It's so vast. Well, sometimes they'll list my credits and they just will be like in disbelief. They'll be like, "Really, you worked on all these different things?"
Right,
and it's like,
yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
So, I mean, it doesn't sound like you've done all that much, huh?
I know.
Yeah.
But I've been a writer for over 15 years, and it's one of the interesting things about being in Los Angeles as a creative person is that sort of opportunities come, your way without sometimes you even expecting it. And so as a creative person, I like to try different things. I like to do different types of projects and such. So so for me, it's always been fun. But lately I have focused on gaming, really put my emphasis on it because within gaming, there's so much variety. So it's sort of like I can get that specialty of being, really specializing in my field of narrative design, but at the same time, I get to work on projects so vastly different from each other. I'm currently, just wrapped working on a murder mystery game. I do all kinds of different genres. The Sand Ship, that's science fiction title. Working on a board. Got an opportunity to work on a board game recently on like a parody board game, which was a lot of fun. So it's really just runs the gamut.
Yeah, and that kind of brings me to my next question. I mean, you mentioned how you did some board games that are, I guess, probably more adult oriented. Some of your video games are more adult oriented, but then you also have done comic books for Disney Princesses and Sesame Street. So how, when it comes to these stories, because that's kind of essentially what you're doing, how do you make sure you compartmentalize all of these very, very different thought processes you have to have?
There used to be more of a tradition of this. Like you have writers like Shel Silverstein or Dr. Seuss who wrote for adults and do body material for adults as in addition to children. I think it's, it really is just that I understand how sometimes being a writer, I think it's sort of like hopping into a giant robot. And, my job is to pilot the robot like it's built and I am just like, running it around and such. And when, each of these projects has their different operating manual of what you can and can't do. But as long as you're like, skilled at whatever skills one needs to pilot a Gundam, you'll be okay from one to the other. You'll sort of get it. There may be specific skills that you need, but for the most part it's kind of similar. I mean, when I'm writing a story for kids, oftentimes I'm just trying to tell a compelling story and I just need to be aware of certain content restrictions and that certain vocabulary might go over their head, but otherwise, it's always about just telling a compelling and interesting story with characters who are motivated, who we know what they want, putting obstacles in their path and watching them overcome those obstacles. That's the heart of it, the heart of the job. It's just then adjusting to the genre, adjusting to the audience. And just making sure that you're not crossing any important boundaries. Sometimes you push a little bit. I find myself sometimes doing that, being like, what, kids can handle it. But for something a little scary, the kids love. I don't know. I always like scary stuff in when I was growing up. I don't like it as much now, but I liked it growing up.
Gotcha. So is this, I mean, I assume with as much as you're doing, I hope it is, and unless you don't sleep, but is this, your full-time role doing
Yeah.
these things? And or do you work for a company, or are you a freelance doing all these things?
I'm a freelancer. We'll say a consultant. I get hired. I have a company
Uh-huh.
that you hire, and then I do this. I write for you, or sometimes I consult. Sometimes people hire me to consult on a story, to give notes on it, or to give feedback on it too. That happens as well. So yeah, that's I work free. I'm a freelancer, proud freelancer, and I pretty much have been for, I say, about since maybe 2008, 2009 or so. So
Yeah.
it's been about 10 years, a little over 10 years, I guess, at this point, being a freelancer.
How does that type of thing happen? Do companies like put out projects that they need people to do, and you like bid for them, or are you just people hiring, know your work and try to hire you for a project, or how does that work as a freelancer?
Mostly the latter. I have a good rep.
Mhm.
I have a number of friends too who work in the industry, and we help each other out. That's part of it. Yeah, but it's mostly most of my work comes from my other work. That being said, in film and television, and comics too, it's very difficult to get work out unless you're sort of in the know. But in other fields, in podcasting and video games, there are job boards and things like that publicly available that you can apply to stuff on. It's not secretive. It's not like I say, if you wanted to write a Star Wars movie, you would have no Kathleen Kennedy, or like George Lucas would have to be your godfather or whatever, in order to get into that room, in order to pitch an idea for a Star Wars, Whereas if you wanted to write the Star Wars video games, that was just a Craigslist ad. Like that was an Indeed job listing, like that you could apply to if you wanted that job. Like, it's so some companies, some media is more, I think, open and democratic in that way than others.
So do you see people that are, wanting to do the movie side, start out in some of these other areas to get their way through the door, or is that just so different that doesn't really work?
I think it's a mix of things. I mean, nobody's LA story, I think, is identical.
Yeah.
Everybody, it's in some ways, I think, people may start off in one thing and then end up doing a completely different thing that they didn't expect. Kind of like career plinko, where you drop your disc at the top of this thing and it bounces here and there, and it finally lands somewhere. But other times, people build career. There are people who were known for writing comics who end up getting tapped for film and TV. There are people who, maybe they want to write for film and TV, but they end up loving comics, and they get those opportunities, and they're like, I don't want to do this other thing. I want to do this. So I'd say it's a mix of both.
So I talk to a very wide ranging group of people. I like to just interview interesting people. So we've talked to travelers and people have won gold medals, all kinds of different things. But the question that I've been asking definitely recently is, how is what we're currently going through with the pandemic, and you in California with some of these wildfires, how is the current world that we're living in affecting your job? I know you're a freelancer, so how's it affecting you, you getting work?
Here's the fascinating thing. For me, for the most part, it hasn't affected my work. And the reason is because a lot of the companies I work for aren't based in the US. They're based in other countries where they have done it, like where they wore masks and they haven't put the coronavirus they put it in their rearview mirror. It's not completely out of sight, and it could always flare up. But for the most part, other countries are back to work. And so generally as the American writer that they hire, I'm the weird I'm the weird one who can't go to restaurants or whatever. So luckily, God, God, willing, I will be able to just keep on writing. I mean, outside it's terrifying, but I mean, the air quality was for a whole week. It was that you couldn't go outside. Like you don't go outside because it's like breathing a pack of cigarettes. It's crazy. So that's horrible. But in terms of my writing, no, for the most part, gigs still come in. I'm still writing video games, and I'm very fortunate.
Yeah, well, that sounds. I'm happy to hear that. I know that. There are going to be some industries that aren't as affected, so I'm really happy that yours is not one of those that is super affected.
Yeah, a lot of my friends, right? They work for various positions in film and TV. They've been out of work. Unfortunately, It's really sad. But there's no production, or there's very little production happening, and so a lot of them are just waiting for things to turn around. It's really tough. It's really tough. I feel for them. I feel for everybody who's going through that, as well as the people who are putting themselves in dangerous situations. That's really tough, and you got to thank them for their service right now. Life wouldn't be possible without them.
Absolutely, yeah. I was listening to another podcast here recently that were talking about that, and they said something that's pretty interesting where. With all the healthcare workers that are really putting themselves truly on the line right now, not that they haven't always, but it's just amplified. We're almost kind of forming a new class of service veterans that we need to make sure that we honor for a long time.
Absolutely. Oh, there's the debt of gratitude we owe them is enormous.
The next thing I want to mention is something I got in my email today. I'm subscribed now to your adventure snack.
Great. Welcome to the party.
Yeah. I guess the adventure snack is a kind of a role-playing choose your own adventure area. Today we were a farm going to town, something like that. But if you would tell us just a little bit more about Adventure Snack and how you came up with all that.
Absolutely. Well, Adventure Snack is a newsletter where I turn your inbox into an adventure. The premise is simple. They're like mini choose your path adventure games. So like the kind you'd play as a kid, with some interesting, unique game mechanics thrown in. So, basically I'll write a setup, a 2 or 3 paragraph setup. We've done them in fantasy settings. We've done them in science fiction, out in space. We've done some that are, it's like Indiana Jones style adventure games, so all different types of premises. And then you'll get a choice. You basically are taken to a pivotal moment where you can choose between a number of different options. And what you choose is what you get. So it's an adventure game with one decision to make. But the idea is that you can play it on a lunch break. That if you love role playing games, if you love adventure games, but maybe you don't have the time, or maybe you just want to cram one in, between meetings or what have you, that this is a great way to do that. It's an adventure on the go, a little dose, of something thrilling and funny and weird, just liven up your day.
Yeah, I did the one today. I don't know if I'm the only one. I'm sure I'm not, but it takes me longer because I picked what I wanted, but then I had to read every single one of them. I couldn't just know the one. I had to know them all. So
that's common. It's true. People can subscribers can read as many of the endings as they want. There's no limit on it. But yeah, absolutely. There's so many different choices, and I try to make each one unique. In this case, the one today was written by a guest author, my friend Luke, who runs a podcast called our RPG Club, RPG Pals Club. And so shout out to Luke for the great story today.
Absolutely. So do you have guest writers a lot? That was going to be my next question. How you, I guess, come up with all of these ideas? I mean, obviously that kind of comes in the territory of just being creative as a whole, like you are. But how do you come up with all these, not just stories, but now have to come up with different endings for
Yeah,
that same story?
the games, the game element. Sometimes they're inspired by different things. Sometimes they're game concepts that I just want to try out. They're basically like concept prototypes just to sort of flesh out a world or an idea to see if it has legs, to see how people respond to it. Other times I'm inspired by the mechanics. So in every adventure snack, there is like a mechanic where it helps sort of guide you to your choice. So, for example, I might ask you to roll a dice, or I might ask you, for pick a song from your iTunes library, or I might ask you, what type of how healthy the lunch that you had today was, and then depending on that and your choices, you'll get to a different ending. So to kind of vary things up. So sometimes I start with one of those mechanics and I build the adventure snack around it. So, and then other times it's, maybe it's a holiday or it's something I want to explore, something I want to tie into because it's relevant. I try to do ones for Halloween and for scary ones for Halloween, and sentimental or ones or holiday themed ones for Christmas. And, sometimes occasionally they'll tie into something with pop culture or whatever, not usually, but sometimes. Whatever inspires me. The fun of it is that I release a new one every 2 weeks. So there's not a lot of time, to hem and haw. It's like, oh, okay, what do I do? Maybe I should do something with that. One time I did an art piece. I did an adventure snack based on an art piece somebody gave me of a floating pizza. And it's like, oh yeah, I should do one where you play as a floating pizza. That'd be fun. That'd be fun. So yeah, it can be all kinds of things.
Yeah. So you mentioned, that it's every 2 weeks, so you can't hem and haw too much. How do you go about that? Do you already have 29, 30, and 31 done? Or sometimes you're a couple days before and like, oh my gosh, I've got to get this finished.
I usually do. So I write a new one once every 2 weeks, usually once a week. So I have a bit of a queue, like a couple of, I'm like 3 ahead or something, like they're 3 or 4 ahead. And that way I can keep going even if, there's an emergency, which I guess is, in 2020, every day is an emergency. So I'm prepared. Yeah. I am prepared for that. For more, there'll be adventure stacks while I sort that out, or just if I want to take a break or whatever, I've got to keep. So yeah, as I say, I'm a couple ahead.
So you're talking about earlier. You were talking about kind of getting off topic. So let's get off topic for just a second.
Yeah, let's do it.
When I was researching you to make sure that I had questions to talk about, do you know that you also share the name with a gospel singer? So I had to separate the two. You do have your own name, GeoffreyGolden.com. So you may be getting a knock on the door when the other Geoffrey Golden gets big. But did you know there's a gospel singer with your name?
He's already pretty big. Yes, I am aware of the gospel singer Geoffrey Golden, and the reason is because our Gmail email addresses are similar enough that I get his email sometimes, which is very funny. And I don't read it. Generally, sometimes I do. Ooh, it's okay. No, but he gets a lot of like requests from various venues across the country to perform, and it's fascinating. I am aware. I got the URL as soon as I found out about URLs. I got that URL. So I've had it for many years, and I'm pretty active with it. I remember when we were doing The Devastator, the publishing company I co-ran, we wanted thedevastator.com for a long time, but there was a Transformers fan site that at that point hadn't been updated in years, and they had the name, and we tried emailing them, we tried reaching out to them, and we could never get a hold of them. And funny enough, when we decided to formally shut down the press, the Devastator as a press, because Amanda got a great job. She's senior editor at Oni Press, which is the company that does Scott Pilgrim comics and Rick and Morty. When we decided to shut it down, we just, as a lark, we looked it up, and that's when the Devastator at thedevastator.com was available finally, when we had decided. So we bought it anyway, just as a point of pride. But yeah, I've never talked to the gospel singer Geoffrey Golden, but I would love to. That would be fun. I know at times I have thought of replying to the request and like going to North Carolina or whatever and just like showing up for a singing engagement just to see what they would do. Like, you did ask for Geoffrey Golden, and I am Geoffrey Golden.
That would be something. I think you absolutely should do that.
I could do some of my karaoke staples. I could do Monster Mash. I could do Sledgehammer by Peter Gabriel. I'm sure they would love it.
You just need to tell them, like, look, I have these parody songs. I am really big in New Zealand. I thought that's what you wanted me for.
That's right. Yeah, it's been was in the early 2000s, but I assume that my work is still reaching across. That work is still out there. Yeah, that would be very funny to see what they did.
Yeah, I like that a lot, for sure. So, anything else in the pipeline? I mean, you've got a lot going on. Mainly things that people, listening to this can check out. What's upcoming?
Oh, because one of the fun things about freelancing is signing all these NDAs that say that I can't talk about a project until it's released. But you know what?
Things that are coming in.
Exactly. If you find me on Twitter at Geoffrey Golden, Geoffrey Golden, you'll hear all about it. And as you say, if you sign up for adventuresnack.com, I'm also I'll also update the players at Adventure Snack about the latest game projects and things that I'm working on as well. So those are good ways to keep up with me.
No, that's awesome. That was going to be the next question: how to keep up with you. Definitely understand you can't always talk about everything. I'm gonna I've got like a really cool. I've got a murder mystery game coming out, and as I said earlier, it's like a cool board game parody. But it's all I can't speak too much about it. A new podcast coming out. It's just there's a lot, but contracts. I mean, I thought we were good friends now, and you're just going to ruin all your NDAs, but I guess not.
This whole situation has gotten me in a huff.
Yeah.
And I was hoping not to be in a huff, but I guess it happened. It happened.
Well, I don't know what to tell you. You'll be the first person that's left here upset. So just realize that.
It's not me, it's you, Greg. That's what you're saying.
Well, I didn't say that, but yeah. Well, good. Well, I don't want to take up too much more of your time. I've really appreciated speaking with you. Thanks so much for being here. And I really enjoyed hearing a little bit about, the backstory on how you got started and exactly how some of these games and comic books and stuff, how they, get their stories. So it's really been a pleasure.
Absolutely, Jackson. The pleasure is mine. Thanks for having me on. Thanks for reaching out. I really enjoyed this. It's a lot of fun.
Absolutely. And that was Geoffrey Golden. Really appreciated his time today. Really enjoyed speaking with him. Really interesting to hear some of the insider information on how games are created, how the entertainment industry is faring during these times, and just some inside information on the industry as a whole. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you'll come back next time. Please subscribe, like, whatever you will do. But most importantly, come back next time, and we'll see you then.
This has been Not in a Huff with Jackson Huff. Thank you for listening. Be sure to join us next time, where we will interview another amazing guest who is sure to make you laugh or make you think. Or hey, maybe even both. But until then, keep being awesome.